But I think the most important thing that I think we all need to know is that we have to support and inspire and encourage each other. There's nothing like having that kind of boost.
Here's an episode with the music of the great saxophonist and composer Jaleel Shaw. This is Dave Douglas for the Greenleaf Music Podcast, A Noise from the Deep. Jaleel went deep. It was a great conversation. And off the mic, we also talked about everything that's going on in the world. Jaleel mentioned to me that at one point he thought about moving to Copenhagen and how he chose to stay in New York and stay in it. And so here we are a few months from this crucial election. Please stay in it. Make sure you're registered to vote. Please vote. Help everyone you know get to the polls. As Reverend Dr. William Barber says, we are called to be a movement. We've got to stand up for each other in the interest of survival. So now to the music with Jaleel Shaw. Find us online at greenleafmusic.com, and please consider joining us as a subscriber to get all these episodes and the entire catalog of music. Thanks. Wow, Jaleel Shaw, thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I mean, we're distanced, but we're talking again.
Right.
So we listened to Flipside, and it's from an album from 2008 that's called Optimism.
Yes.
It seems like right now in this moment.
Right. That's the album I should have put out now.
Wow.
Right.
Was it related to the election of Obama or was it just like a feeling that was in the air for you? Or
you know what? It was not related to Obama. It's funny. It was, and I think I'm trying to remember when I wrote it. I actually recorded the album in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And It wasn't related to that. I think it was just the feeling that I felt when actually writing that song. It was just a feeling of optimism. It's funny, sometimes when I compose, I do have a very specific emotion or a very specific situation. Yeah, I usually have a situation like the album that I put out after that. You know, almost every composition is based on something that I experienced. Optimism is, a lot of it was just based on the compositions where some of it were challenges to me, and some of it were like I was really just into the music. It wasn't based on, I was home writing and just 100% in the music.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds optimistic.
Yeah.
I mean, just to get right to the music, you're playing, it's always so like agility is one of the words that comes to mind. You're flexible, you kind of go in all these different directions, but it's thoughtful, but it's also like powerful at the same time.
Thank you.
And
Thank
then like the sound, the intonation, the time, the generating the ideas, it just seems to come together. So, what's the word? Effortlessly.
Wow. Thank you.
And so it just sounds flowing. And the thing that I made me want to ask you, and it's like I'm going right to the super nerdiest question right at the beginning.
Okay.
But like, what sort of practice techniques do you think about to get you to that place? Of course, both as an instrumentalist, but also as a musician, the conception of ideas and
Right.
getting them out in such a fluid way.
Well, I think you know, I've spent a good amount of time working out kind of like technical exercises to help me get through different uh, chord progressions or maybe just chord scales. Dealing more with kind of like maybe like diatonic exercises based off of chord scales, trying to come up with as many as I can.
You mean like permutations of the scale?
Permutations of the scale,
within a key.
within the key,
Mm-hmm.
and then once I come up with those, I try to figure out ways to play those through all the changes of as many tunes as I can, as I know. Different ways to like dealing more with motivic development and developing these ideas through changes.
Mm.
And there are different ways that I do it, intervallically, chromatically, and I'll sit and I'll write them down. I have, if you were to look to the side, I have, piles of paper, where I'm writing down ideas, and I'll practice them. And there's many different ways as I can. I'll practice a major, minor, diminished, half diminished. So,
so they're like shapes, interval shapes that you take through the different chord qualities and chord changes.
Right.
So what? Yeah.
And that's the thing with
infinite amount of
and it's infinite
practice.
It's infinite. Yeah. Like I have things that I probably have from 2004, 2005 that I have pages that that I could go to and say, okay, let's just deal with this page. And I could probably deal with that page for a year. Every time I start a page, I put a year at the top of the page.
That's smart.
I look back and there are things, and a lot of stuff I realize over time that some ideas, I might have an idea from 2003 and the idea that from 2008 that somehow have come together in my mind. And that's how I approach different things, and also honestly, a lot of it is not, when I get on the bandstand, I'm not thinking like this.
That was my next question.
Right.
Like when you get on stage to play or that recording we just heard, none of that is consciously going on in your mind.
Not at all. And I don't want it to. I think overall, I truly want to improvise, but I want to have the the knowledge and the technique to be able to get, to be able to play what I'm hearing overall.
Right.
Another thing that I do, or I mean, I haven't done as much lately, but especially when I was in college, I used to record every performance I did, and I actually still do it now. I have my Zoom. I set it up before every performance, and I would go back to listen to those recordings and try to find out what it was that that I liked, and what it was that I didn't like, and what it was I felt like I was struggling with. When I was in college, I did it immediately. I would have a gig. I had a mini disc player. On the way home from that gig, I would have my headphones plugged into the mini disc player, listening to
That's
the
brutal.
recording that I did, and it was brutal. It was brutal. In fact, a lot of people told me I shouldn't do it because it was hard. It was hard, and there were times when I would wait. I would wait a couple weeks, but I felt this urgency when I was in school to really, overcome, the challenges that some that I knew and some that I wasn't even aware of. I feel as though listening to yourself is, and I've said this before, listening to yourself is kind of like, it's always having access to a mirror,
Right.
like
Ballet dancers are always watching themselves in the mirror.
exactly. And it's like, if you can imagine getting up every day and not knowing what you're wearing, just randomly picking up clothes and putting them on, and having no mirror to walk past to see what you look like every day. And then one day you get a mirror and you realize, wow, this is not what I wanted to wear. This is not the image that I thought I had of myself. That's I think along those terms, when it comes to music, I think it's great to listen to yourself, and I mean, also listen to others, of course. But sometimes we have habits that we don't even realize. We're listening to ourselves.
Yeah. And doing that in real time too. And I'll bet that listening to all those hours of tapes got you more focused in on what was happening in the moment.
Right. It's true.
I never did that. Wow.
Yeah, it's definitely helped me a lot. I've had my moments when I've listened to a whole performance and I've said to myself, that's not the direction that I want to go in. That's not who I want to be.
Yeah. You pick the things that you need to work on to change that. What about, you mentioned these scale permutations and ideas. I know you've probably done a hell of ear training because the intonation is so perfect. But what about time? What about your time feel? I mean, is that something that you thought about and tried to develop? You've been playing with Roy Haynes all these years. There must be some sort of thing.
Roy was one of, I feel like that's something that I've always kind of worked on anyway, because I did a lot of transcribing, and when I transcribed, I always tried to play along with the recording. So when I transcribe, I try to play along with the recording and play without the recording. And I find that playing along with the recording forces you to, try to have the same time that artist that you're transcribing has.
Yeah.
I've been working on the Charlie Parker transcription now. And his time, of course, is like, it's flexible, but it's there. It's very strong.
Yeah.
And that's always a challenge. And I think that has helped me a lot over time. When I look back. Yes. When I look back. And I teach at Manhattan School of Music and at New School, and I've talked about transcribing, and I try to have all my students transcribe, but sometimes I get resistance because to them they don't want to sound like this artist or that artist.
Right.
But I always tell them that there's so much more than, it's not always just about, my concept is not to be that person that I'm transcribing. And there's so many different, things to look at, like rhythm, harmony, sound, intonation, you know,
Yeah.
those are things to think about. And sometimes you just take that one thing. Like another thing about time for time now, I'm also really into like Hank Mobley, and I really feel like his time feel and his sense of time is, impeccable, you know, um, especially just playing eighth notes, which I feel as though is very hard to play at times.
Mm-hmm.
So I have my students jump around from different artists, and we concentrate on, the strength of that artist that they're transcribing. So that has helped me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just being at home and just playing tunes, without any accompaniment.
No metronome, no nothing.
Sometimes metronomes, and I do think the metronome is important, and I'm realizing that more and more. The metronome more for etudes, which is another thing that I practice, and I think it helps time a lot. Etudes and some classical pieces. But when I'm home, my foot, just tapping my foot and playing along and focusing on different rhythms, saying, okay, I'm just going to focus on playing eighth notes through this piece, or I'm just going to focus on playing 16th notes through this piece, and seeing, how I'm able to execute that.
Right.
Now, again, when I go in the bandstand, I don't think, okay, I'm just going to play eighth notes for a chorus, but sitting at home and challenging myself to just play eighth notes, I'm always surprised at how hard it is, or even whole notes.
That's a creative enough exercise.
Yeah.
Where it's not only about the notes, it's also about the headspace and the spirit of it. And that's what's preparing you to stand on the bandstand and not think about any of that.
Right. The feel.
Be second nature.
Right.
Do you record yourself when you're tapping your foot? And go back and see how accurate it is? Because that would be a
You know what? I don't. And it's funny. I should, because I mean, I shouldn't say I don't. I don't do that now. No, and maybe I should say I do, because I've been just recording myself from time to time with my iPhone, just doing videos. And I do listen to them, especially ballads. I've been trying to record myself. Well, I shouldn't say well, it's been a while. It's been about a month, but maybe about a month ago, I was recording myself playing ballads and just listening to the time and counting along. Maybe not even with the metronome, just seeing how I was playing through the time. Nice. And seeing if I was dragging. And there were times when I was definitely dragging.
Well, because the tempo is slower on a ballad, you're more exposed. There's more space between you.
And I think ballads are extremely important, for dealing with time. And then going back to Roy Haynes, Roy, like when it comes to time, I feel like he's like the master of time. And he's not a drummer that's going to, well, at least playing with, because it's funny because I've heard other recordings where he's using the hi-hat on 2 and 4, and maybe he's feathering the bass drum on all 4 beats. I've heard him do recordings like that, but when he's playing with us, he's not doing that, and he expects us all to have a very strong sense of time. And first
played with the very top masters of the music, and including singers, all the great vocalists,
exactly.
When you talk about a ballad and phrasing and time, and you go to Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald and Carmen McRae and
Sarah Vaughan,
Dinah Washington,
So
I'm going to ask you some more about Roy and hear a track that you played on with him, but first I want to stick with your record, skip ahead to your second record, which was called Perspective.
That's my first record, actually.
Oh, that's your first. So I thought Optimism was your first.
No, Optimism.
I got it backwards. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right.
Or maybe Wikipedia is wrong. No, it's probably me.
So that's all right.
This tune is called Conflict of Interests.
Yes.
That this one was about things that you experienced.
Know what? I wonder if it was, or I actually think that's what the songs sound like to me.
Oh, okay. Let's check it out.
Okay.
that is some amazing playing.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a great record. Robert Glasper is on
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
Vincente Archer and Jonathan Blake.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the guitarist on
Lage Loon.
It's Lage Lun. Wow. Yeah, it's just amazing. I was thinking about how, I remember hearing this back, at that time, and you coming here from Philadelphia, and it seems like the Philly connection is a really important aspect of your music and of your formation and of what the whole project is about.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So you do feel like Philly was important for you and
extremely important.
inspiring musicians from there.
Yes, extremely important. I started playing the saxophone when I was around 9. And I think a year after that, my uncle saw that I was pretty serious. I was practicing and I was improving, and he recommended, he told my mom that I should check out a youth jazz ensemble that was being run by a man named Lovett Hines. And I went and I joined that. I think I was like 10 or 11 years old. And when I joined, Christian McBride and Joey DeFrancesco were just leaving the program. And I jumped right in, started learning, all these tunes out the real book, learning about Charlie Parker, learning about John Coltrane, learning Now's the Time and Equinox. And, it's funny, there's actually a video on YouTube of me when I was, I think 11 or 12 years old playing with Christian McBride. And when I look back at that, I'm realizing like, man, I'm 11 years old playing Mr. PC, with Christian McBride. And I like at that time I knew what it was, and I knew who Train was, and I understood the depth of who Train was. And it was all because of people like, Lovett Hines and, also I had a great saxophone teacher named Rayburn Wright. Mm. And, just the Philadelphia scene, right, really embraced me. There was a saxophonist named Byard Lancaster, who embraced me and took me under his wing and had me playing on gigs with him. There was Odine Pope. Mm-hmm. There was a club called Ortlieb's that I used to play at. I used to go in and sit in with people like Mickey Roker and Shirley Scott and Sid Simmons. Mm. And, I had some great role models, great people that really became a big part of my life, like John Blake Jr., great violinist, but that played with McCoy Tyner and Grover Washington Jr., who also became a role model to me and a mentor to me because he was living in Philly. Mm. And, during that time, also, when I met John Blake Jr., I also met his son, Jonathan Blake, who's on, my past 3 records.
I didn't realize he was the third.
Well, he's right. He is. He's the third.
Jonathan Blake, the violinist, was junior. Then,
right. Well, I think John, because his name is Jonathan and not John. They don't consider that a third. But I got to ask him about that. I never thought about that. But Jonathan and I, we've been playing together since, I guess I was around 13, 14 years old.
That's great.
So, there was that scene. And also the thing about the Philadelphia community was that I never thought about genres maybe until I got to Berkeley, maybe. There was so much different music going on. I got to play with, R&B singers like Billy Paul when I was a kid. I got to, hang out and go to gigs with and sometimes sit in with the Roots there. It was just a really open scene. I did merengue gigs with a saxophonist named Bobby Zankel. Mm-hmm. Wow. It was just open, and you got to play with a lot of musicians, and because it was so close to Philadelphia, there were some really great musicians from New York that were coming down regularly.
Yeah.
Especially to perform at a place called the Mill Creek. I think it was called, I know it was called Mill Creek, and they brought in musicians, probably weekly to play. And every musician that came down had to do a workshop for the kids in Philly. So I got to meet so many musicians that came down, and so many that when I got to New York, everyone remembered me from doing those Mill Creek.
Nice.
Workshops as a kid, and then I got to sit in on a lot of gigs from when I was a kid.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, but the Philly scene is amazing, man. It's really I've never experienced any scene like that, honestly, since I left there and got to travel around the world. When I remember what that was coming up, I haven't seen anything like that.
Do you still go down there often?
I don't.
In the last few months, obviously, but
in the last few months, no. Yeah. I actually taught at Temple University for a while, so I was going down there every once a week. My mom's still there, so I do go there. I don't really go there, and I haven't gone to the clubs or hang. I haven't hung on the scene that much, but I go down there to play pretty regularly. Maybe every 2 or 3 months, I might play there. Yeah,
that is so great. That what you're talking about, what, late 90s or when you were
mid
11, 12, 13 and having all these opportunities to learn from your elders, from the community. That's
probably like mid 90s to I graduated high school in 96. So, yeah.
Well, I hope those opportunities are still there for our musicians coming up now.
There are a lot of great programs that are starting, or that started after I left, that I don't know about, and Lovett Hines is still going. Lovett Hines, he has the Clef Club now. They have a building that kind of, I think it was finished right when I moved from Philly to go to school, but they have a program, and they're it's really a great thing. I don't know if the club scene is the same as what it was before, especially I realized how great Ortlieb's was. Did you ever go to Ortlieb's?
I did, yeah. And there were more places to play in Philadelphia, I remember. That period, and even a little after that, but it's changed a lot.
We get the Painted Bride, which I'm not sure I heard that they were closing, but that I performed there, and actually I remember I did something with David Murray when I was like 14.
Wow.
He came to Philly and auditioned a bunch of musicians, and got to play with him there. I met Bobby Watson, and I think I did something with him. Did I? Well, I think I met him at the Painted Bride, and we actually got close. He became a mentor of mine. There were just so many opportunities for young musicians there.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Well, you were doing the work, as you told us earlier. So
I mean, I was practicing, but I think that motivation, I think there's nothing like inspiration and motivation, encouragement,
getting up close to your heroes, and feeling that time and power and sound, energy.
But also having that support and having that encouragement. I think that's the most important thing. I really, when I see people that have that motivation, I think that's amazing. And I praise those people that are able to get up every day to and do things on their own. But I think the most important thing that I think we all need to know is that we have to support and inspire and encourage each other. There's nothing like having that kind of boost, as a human being, not even as a musician or an artist. I feel like the more encouragement I got and the more support I got, especially in those days, the more I was motivated, the more I was inspired to write, to practice, and then also to help other people too.
Wow. So you have this song that you wrote that's called I Wish I Didn't Know.
Yes.
Isn't
Yeah.
there a ballad called I Wish I Knew? Or
There is.
is this a play on that? Or
No, it's not. It's not. Um, that that was actually, now this is going to my third record.
yeah.
Um, Now my third record, the album is called The Soundtrack of Things to Come. And that's because when I finished all the tunes, all the compositions, I realized that all of them spoke to a experience I had had recently. A lot of it was based on my father passing unexpectedly. He passed, and I didn't have the best relationship with him, and my sister didn't either. And my younger sister had told me way before he passed, because she didn't get to have the relationship that she wanted with him. She told me, if anything ever happens to him, don't tell me. I don't want to know. I just want to, I just want to remember things as they are and not think about what I've lost or anything like that. And when I got the call that he passed, I had forgotten that she told me that. And I called her and I told her, that he's gone. And she cried and she said, I wish I didn't know. I didn't want to know this, And that was amongst other things, that was going on in my life. But I think that was, that was a very defining, that moment, I shouldn't say defining, but that was a very heavy moment in my life. And I actually went, like, right after she said that to me and she's crying on the phone. And, I had different emotions because I wasn't that close to my father, but I did have the relationship with him that she didn't have. But hearing her cry on the phone like that, was, and I think I had even maybe wrote that song, that song before. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Gives you a new sense of the emotion and the weight, and the transition and the meaning of. Wow, that's quite a story.
Yeah.
Wow. I got to ask you about the melody on that. What's happening with the rhythm in the melody? I mean, again, I go back to my nerdiness, and you told this heavy emotional story about where the thoughts and feelings and emotions around creating the piece. And I don't want to take any of that away,
Yeah.
of course, because it's a great musical statement that now that you've told me the story, I have a deeper
Right.
insight into it. But I did feel like on that melody, there's something really special happening.
Well, thank you. Actually, the funny thing about that composition is it was something that I wrote, and I remember, as we all do when we compose, it's like, okay, what's next? Where did I go with this? What's happening? And I remember having just just a melody, and not really having an arrangement of it. And I remember just hearing those chords and hearing that chord progression. And I actually think the chord progression came first, and then I just played the melody over it. And then I thought, okay, am I going to have a bridge here? What am I going to do? How am I going to move this? And I decided to just, I had a gig coming up, and I decided to take it to the rehearsal and figure out, okay, how am I going to do this? And I had the band play it, and then I figured out, okay, I'm going to have the last last two bars vamp. That's going to be the intro.
Mm-hmm.
Then I figured, okay, I'm going to use those last two bars and have them vamp every time in between that short melody,
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what happened. I kind of just rearranged the melody that I had to kind of extend it and give it. I kind of didn't want to lose the not the intensity, but the there was a feeling.
It's like a mournful quality to it.
Yeah, there was a feeling in it that I didn't want to leave. And sometimes we go to a bridge or we go to another part, and it leaves that feeling. And how do we get back to it?
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments when I was composing, and I felt like it's okay to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of just goes in it's like a small section, very like a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to stay here. And the more and more I listen to music now, some of my favorite composers, Wayne Shorter or Andrew Hill, I realize they have these compositions, and sometimes I get stuck and I feel like I'm stuck when I'm not stuck, when the song is over. I mean, and that song is done, the composition is finished,
Right.
That's what it is.
You don't need more.
Yeah, I don't need more.
More is going to just complicate the thing.
Yeah.
But on that, I can appreciate that about the song, but also it feels like the melody is sort of contracting and expanding, like the way that it works in the rhythm against the chord progression that you created is sort of unusual and feels like it speeds up and slows down.
Oh, well, that was, I wanted them to do that. I told them, I said, this is, one thing that I try to do when especially when I'm rehearsing, I try to explain the emotion behind the piece,
mm-hmm.
and just explain, what I want the music to convey, what I want people to feel. And what I was feeling, and that was frustration, frustration and wanting to call people and then deciding maybe I don't want to call someone, or just, being very upset and then being calm and being upset. And that's what happened the day I found out my father died. I was, I never cried about it, but I was very, I was just frustrated because my father and I hadn't talked for 10 years before he passed. And there were some things that I wanted to say to him, and there were things that I wanted him to understand, and I was going back and forth between, I never got to tell him this, and maybe he should have known this, or he should have tried. I'm okay with it. And I felt like that was something that was a feeling that the message that I was trying to convey, and that with that piece, and with having them, slow down, build it up,
Mm-hmm.
let's walk here, let's open it up here. It's just those moments of frustration and what's the word? Just confusion. And I don't want to say confusion as much as just frustration and trying to deal with those emotions at the time. I was anxious.
Yeah.
At the same time, I was, I kind of knew it was going to end like that. I kind of knew that that's how I was going to feel when it was going to happen. We're going deep into the emotional side of the music.
That's great. That's great. I mean, yeah. Let's let the music transition us, and hear some Roy Haynes.
Okay.
That is so amazing to hear, Roy Haynes.
Yes.
And Martin Bejarano sounds great on it. It's Roy Hargrove. Oof. Yeah. Oh, heartbreak.
Yeah.
You sound fantastic.
Thank you.
But I mean, what's one thing about Roy Haynes that you think most people don't get?
Well, I hope everyone gets it.
We get a lot, but it's always a little mysterious to me. I mean,
I think that's the thing with Roy is that he's for me probably one of the most creative musicians I've ever played with. And it's especially drummers, one of the most creative drummers, and he's like the father of it all, but even still, I haven't played with a drummer like, I shouldn't say because a lot of drummers come out of Roy, but his sense of time, his sense of creativity, and spontaneity, is something that I think everyone has to pay attention to and acknowledge. It's coming out of Bird. It's coming out of like when you see the picture of Bird and Roy Haynes and Thelonious Monk and Charles Mingus.
Yeah.
These are someone I posted a picture of it and someone said that's the real Mount Rushmore. These guys. And when I think about Bird and Roy Haynes, I think about rhythm and listening to Charlie Parker, I'm always reminded that rhythmically, Charlie Parker could play anything he wanted, anywhere over the beat, and that's how Roy plays. And so if you go and you expect Roy to be, just playing ding, ding, a ding, ding, a ding, and just playing the hi hat on 2 and 4, and the bass drum, if just to keep the time, then that's not what.
Right, and
So,
also all those fills and even his playing of the time, it's never regular. For
right,
1 second, there's always like this push and pull going on.
right. And for me, that's art. That's and I think that's the beautiful thing about Roy as a drummer, is that he's like, how creative and how much he has a sense of time, but he can push and pull, and it's still right there.
Yeah.
When I listen, so one thing that I've like going back to you were asking me about, learning about time with Roy. I became more conscious of my time with Roy.
Yeah.
Especially when we were playing, medium tempo.
Sure.
That
becomes so apparent because there's also openness about what he's playing that
yep.
If you step into that and you're not lining up, I mean, it's not even lining up. It's just having a good, solid time.
Exactly.
That's
exactly
going to work. But if you don't, it's really obvious.
Yeah. And that's what it was. It became obvious. I realized, I said, okay, I need to really, take the time and really work on my time. And I started working on playing just medium tempo. It was more medium tempo that revealed a lot than anything else, and ballads. So I started working on my time, and being more aware of where Roy was and where I was, and it's about everyone having a strong sense of time and coming together. Mm-hmm. And on my first gig, one of my first gigs, he said, "Don't lean on me." He said, "I'm not the metronome."
Wow.
He
said that. Was that before you had played or after?
This was before. This was like one of the first gigs I did with Roy. We got backstage. It was two things he said, and the first thing was funny because I had been used to playing big band where you get to play one solo, and even in that solo you can't play too long. I had been playing with the Mingus Big Band for years, and I had toured with the Basie Band and a little bit with the Vanguard Orchestra, and I wasn't used to taking long solos. So I'll never forget Roy. We got off stage and Roy yelled at us and said, "Don't you guys want to play? Why are you playing these short solos?" And I had never been told to play a short solo. So, I was told that. But then he also said, that same night, "Don't lean on me. I'm not there to give you all the time. You got to have your own sense of time." And it was one magical moment when we were out on the road. This is when everything, the skies opened and I saw the light, and I should have seen it before, but it was him saying this. We were sitting down at dinner and we were talking about swing or something about time. And he said, no one could play time like Charlie Parker and John Coltrane. He said, I could play anything behind them and they were just full steam ahead. They had complete balance. They had complete control over time. And that's when I went back and started listening to Roy playing with Charlie Parker and John Coltrane. And I realized, wow, it spoke so much about, their genius and their control, their control over time and rhythm, the importance of rhythm.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you about that in the extra.
Okay.
Because that was your most recent record, and I would imagine you're working on something and there's something coming up. And I know during this time, it's hard to, keep that moving. And
yeah.
But I bet you were just getting ready to make your next record.
Yes. I had planned on recording in May, actually. And, I've been playing with the quartet with Lawrence Fields and Linda O and Joe Dyson. And we have been playing together for a long time now, and I've been meaning to record them for a long time. And finally, I have enough pieces to do maybe a couple of records. And I called them and I said, let's do it when you're free. They told me they were free in May. So I started trying to look for a studio to record in May. And I had one. And, I think maybe they told me they weren't available till June, actually. But as soon as, I felt ready, the pandemic hit. So, it really slowed things down.
Well, I hope that we'll be able to be doing things like that again soon.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I'd be curious to hear where the next one goes.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. The next one is I feel like the next one is going to be more of a mixture of probably everything or yeah, a mixture of the different approaches that I took over the past 3 records. Just dealing with experiences and musical challenges. Because some of the on Optimism, a lot of the music was, I shouldn't say a lot of it, but some of the music was me trying to work out things, musically, and I challenged myself compositionally. So I think the third record's going to be a combination of all of that, everything I've learned thus far.
Nice.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm actually really looking forward to recording something. Now I'm just like, I got to put something out because it's been such a long time.
We got to take care of this situation and get you in the studio.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, thank you so much for all of that very personal dive into the music and just life, and wow, an intense time. There's this Tom Harrell record that you played on, Colors of a Dream, and I thought maybe I would go out with a track from that because he featured you pretty prominently on this one. And it's Esperanza Spalding is singing and playing bass, obviously.
Yeah, it's Esperanza Spalding.
Harrell, and it's sort of an unusual piece for Tom, I think. And I guess when I heard your solo, I was like, so did Tom tell you to go totally top?
No, he didn't. He didn't. He just had these pieces.
Little instructions.
No. Yeah. We actually, there weren't really any instructions. I just, number one, I really, that was one of my favorite pieces of the, and I was glad that I got to get the solo on there because Wayne and I kind of split the solos up, on a lot of tunes. But that was one of my favorite pieces, and I just really heard it. I was really hearing that piece, and I really playing with Tom. I got to play with him in that group, and I did a couple quintet gigs with him at the Vanguard. And he's such a great composer, and it's the same with him and Roy. Like, there are never any instructions. They don't say, play this way or do this or do that.
Right.
We just get together and rehearse, and they want you to do what they brought you in for. So
yeah, and that's it reminds me of when I was really green, and I got the call from Horace Silver, and there was all these dates and go out to Malibu and rehearse and all this stuff, but there was no contract, there was nothing on paper, and there was no instruction, just like what you're talking about. And I said, somebody advised me, well, isn't there a contract? What's going on? And so I asked Horace, and he said, if you play the way I've heard you play on these recordings, that's your contract.
Right. Wow.
Like, oh.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
But that's the real music. It's I got to play with Tom a little bit, and yeah, it's like, I mean, the writing is incredibly specific.
Yeah.
But then the execution of it is really, it's like he says, ABC, mind your ABCs. He told me, always be cool.
Oh yeah, he said that? Is that what he said? Wow. Did you guys play at the Vanguard?
Well, yeah, we did.
Yeah, I missed that.
It's really fun.
I missed that. Yeah,
It's a trip for
yeah,
me. I mean, yeah.
yeah.
So this is fantastic music, and thank you so much for all the wisdom and the musical insights.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you about impressions in the extra, and we'll listen to
Okay,
some Coltrane playing with Roy Haynes. And
okay.
but for now, this was great. I
All
really
right.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed the music. Thanks for listening. Come check out Greenleaf Music and say hello. Thanks.